We are live, and let's see, is my intro playing? I don't know. I can't really hear it, Dan. Can you hear it?
I don't
I
know.
can't
Do you
hear
want me
my
to,
intro.
you want me to sing a little Taylor Swift so we feel at
I
home
think
here?
maybe, I think maybe, I think maybe that's the thing.
Nobody wants that. We
Here
would
we
get
go.
one. Here we go. I couldn't have replicated this.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you're pretty good though. You're a good Swiftie. I bet you know all the lyrics by heart. Or
I'm not going to deny or confirm nor deny.
let me ask you this. I know you're a big Swiftie.
Yeah,
When you went to the concert, you went to
yeah,
the SoFi concert, yeah?
yeah.
Or yeah. Were you, did you know all the things to do, like the heart and the,
No, that's a good. Yes, because I studied. I looked their
okay.
translations of all the stuff you got to do. Did I do
Oh,
it well? No, but the heart, the
yeah, the heart. And
so
then like saying certain things,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that. Yeah, I did my research. His name was Zachary Parkins,
Uh-huh.
18-year-old UCLA student. I used him as my research.
Well, see, that's what an education is for. Is to be able to
Yes.
study up and be prepared to make the proper hand and vocal gestures at a Taylor Swift
Yeah,
concert.
absolutely.
The work of the father is done.
And by the way, he we're going to talk about cheating in baseball a little later, but he was cheating in Swiftie land because the concert we went to one of the last ones in Indianapolis
Uh-huh.
and in November, but he had been to three others before that.
Oh,
He
that's
had
good. Yeah,
yes,
it's like a spring
yes.
training situation. Yeah.
So he already knew what the playlists were,
Yeah.
and he would say, "Daddy, don't look at spoilers." Because one of my things, right? So I guess we could spoil now because the concert's no longer going, the Eras tour. My favorite album. Some may clown on me for this one, but my favorite album is Lover from Taylor Swift because
There are no wrong
I
answers.
just love all of those songs, right? They
Yeah.
got zany songs like "You Need to Calm Down," right? "Cruel Summer" is one of my favorite songs. Okay, so he knows this, and he goes, "So you have to make your prediction. What era do you think she's gonna go?" And I'm like, "Well, it's
Your son is
probably."
Mickey Mouse, by the way.
Hey,
Go
hey,
ahead.
he's always gonna have that voice he had when
Yeah.
he was 6 years old,
Okay,
right?
perfect. Okay.
Daddy, right? Like always gonna have that voice. I'm not gonna take a bath. I'm the boss of me, you know. So yes, it is
Perfect.
funny that when I imitate him, people say, "Oh, does he actually sound like that?" I'm like, "Yeah, he did when he was 6." Anyway, so, so he knew that was my favorite album.
Yeah.
And he kept asking me, "What do you think she's going to open with?" I said, "Well, obviously something high energy." So I'm thinking Reputation, right?
Yeah.
Like, you bring it with some Reputation or even 1989. Boom, right in there. Boom. But as we saw, it was Cruel Summer. I was so excited.
No,
I was like,
Miss
"You
Americana.
knew." Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
Miss Americana at my concerts. I don't know what
Oh,
kind of nonsense you
yes.
call.
The first full one though, right?
Yeah.
The first full song that came out, it
Yeah.
was done right. So anyway, I was pretty excited about that. And You Need to Calm Down was in the set list. I didn't think that she was gonna play it because I'm like, that's a zany song, you know. You need to calm down. So
It's good advice. It's good life advice.
yeah, you know when we pull out all the KNBR, Sports Phone 68 stops and we get like
Yeah.
sound drops and all that.
Yeah.
When we start getting amped up, when these guys start getting amped up, we'll have
Oh.
to do the sound drop. You need to calm down. You're getting too loud, right? Okay. Enough of Taylor.
Yeah.
How are you, Dan? How's your week been? What's been going on in your life? You've been writing some stuff, I'm sure. We haven't talked in a bit. Just want to catch up.
Yeah. No, it's good. This is my favorite time of year for baseball. More so than the playoffs, more so than the World Series. I just think April is so fun. Baseball is back. Spring is in the air. You can have even the San Francisco Giants can have hope at this time of year. Off to a hot start.
Barely.
And not eliminated yet, as far as I know.
No.
And just even when the Giants were bad when we were kids, April you can still dream in April, and that's all
Yes.
I want out of a baseball season is a chance to feel invested emotionally connected, to feel like anything is possible. And I just love, it's part of the, especially in California, but this spring is nice. Baseball on the radio is nice. We come out here with the Giants broadcast. You got John Miller, Mike Krukow, Dwayne
Oh, I
Kuiper,
love those guys.
and it just sounds like baseball heaven to me. Just a spring day in the car radio, and I just love it.
I know you and I, back in the days, we would listen on the radio. Some really great announcers we had, right? Lon Simmons, Hank Greenwald, right? Guys like that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. This is kind of a sidebar off our run of show, but what was some of your favorite announcers, Giant announcers?
Well, it's funny. I wonder how many people love maybe the first broadcaster they heard, because I love Hank Greenwald and still love him, with all due respect to John Miller and the rest. Because Hank helped teach me baseball. And I think that's what a good broadcaster does. They explain the situations and what the goal is in terms of moving runners over, or maybe some history is told between innings or between a pitching change. Like, I felt like a lot of what I know about baseball, I learned from listening to Hank Greenwald on the radio. And, his voice was terrific and his sense of humor was terrific. But, it's kind of like a first love situation. And I wonder how many people their favorite announcer is also their favorite, because to me, that just sounded like Giants baseball. And to this day, there are things that I think of like, yeah, that's, Hank used to say blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. What about you?
Yeah. For me, Lon Simmons. Lon. Yeah. Like I remember, and he did a lot of different sports, right? He was a Niners announcer as well. He did the Giants. He also did the Ace, I think, as well. At some point, right? Maybe after Bill King. I know Bill King was awesome too. I mean, Bill King was amazing.
Terrific.
But yeah, I loved Hank. And there are the sayings, right? Remember Ron Fairley? Oh, he's running. He's on his horse. He's going to track it down.
I think he's also a big can of corn guy.
Can of corn. In the future, fast forward from that point, like one of my first softball teams was named Can of Corn. So who would have known? Crazy.
We'll have a good Lon Simmons story, because I was doing a story on Candlestick Park was not the home of the Niners for a long time. A lot of glorious stuff happened at Candlestick Park, but it's closing. Yeah. So I talked to many people as I could about your favorite memories, or what do you savor about having been part of the Candlestick glory. He goes, well, Candlestick and I, we had a kinship because we were both big and ugly and full of wind.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great line.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And remember his call, Steve Young had a crazy run against the Vikings.
Yeah.
And his
one of my favorites.
Perfect for it. It's like, gets away again. He gets away again. And every time he made a spinning tackle breaking move, Lon Simmons turned it up one more notch and one more notch. It was just such a glorious call of a crazy play.
So good.
That's the hardest thing for an announcer to do, right? Is capture what's happening, but also what it's like, what it feels like. Here's the play. Here's the proper amount of drama to capture what we're seeing.
Perfect. It was perfect. And I know we in the past on this show had talked about Vin Scully and just his stuff and how knowledgeable he is. I think you brought up the two guys that currently do the Giants, Bill Miller and Krukow, right?
It's John Miller and then Krukow and Kuiper.
Kuiper, right. Those guys are super knowledgeable, man. And I know we grew up watching Kruk pitch, right? That nasty curveball he had.
Yeah. Well, this is a good measure of a good announcer. Krukow and Kuiper are so funny that they're almost better when it's like an 8-1 game in August, slow paced, and they got to fill time, and they can riff on the people in the crowds, and they can spin some yarn from their own playing days. It's almost more entertaining than the game is sometimes, because they can go on riffs, and they're just they've got a genuine friendship. They have a genuine love of the game. They would love it. I mean, they've said so. I mean, I got to know them, and they're like, if the game is 25 innings, all the better, because there's no place they'd rather be than in a game behind the microphone.
Yeah, absolutely. And nowadays, it's going to be hard to see a 25 inning game. I don't even. I mean, with the runner on second and all that, it's like, that's kind of crazy. So, yes, baseball season is here. I'm pretty excited. The Giants have off to a hot start, but they're in third place, of course, behind the Dodgers and the Padres, two of the best teams in baseball. And though the Yankees were off to a hot start a few weeks ago, like hitting home runs like woo out of the stadium.
Yeah.
So one of the things I did want to talk to you about, cheating in baseball has always been a thing. Kicking putting pine tar on bats, on balls, kicking trash cans. You remember the Houston Astros thing a while back. Now they were talking about these torpedo bats. I don't know anything other than what I read, but it looks like a bat's a bat. So I want to ask you, like, what is this torpedo bat? Just like fluff? Is it real? Fake news? Like, what's going on here, Dan? Corey want to know.
It's a good question. And by the way, I did not plan this, but as you were talking, there's a whole book about cheating in the history of cheating in baseball called Intentional Balk by Mark Armour and Daniel Levitt, and it gets into like what was going on in the 1800s and what were the shenanigans back then. And the premise of the book is that since a set of rules have existed, people have figured out how to get around the rules or to push the rules.
Yeah.
And an ethical debate about what's gamesmanship and what is over the line, flat out cheating. By all indications, this torpedo bats is within the rules. It's pushing the boundaries of the rules. The Major League Baseball fairly quickly said these bats are legal. They meet our legal specifications. There's also the issue of like, is this an instant overreaction? The Yankees had a huge opening weekend against the Brewers, whose pitching staff maybe not going to replace Koufax and Drysdale. Like, was it just bad pitching against a really good deep lineup? How much do you want to overreact? It is, two things. One is it reminds me a little bit of the maple bat revolution in the early 2000s. Barry Bonds, it had always been ash bats. In this woodmaker in Canada, Sam, I should know his last name, Sam Holman, made Sam's bats, and he started using maple bat. It was the same principle as the torpedo bats, which is, it's a harder wood. You're maximizing the sweet spot, and Bonds and a lot of other hitters had just incredible success. And back then, it was the same phenomenon as this torpedo bat, which is this legal? Should this be allowed? Is it an unfair advantage? Ultimately deemed no, and then like everybody went from using ash bats to maple bats, which like broke way more often. By the way, that was the downside of these bats. But that's a good parallel. What I also think too is it might be a strange strange comparison, but it reminds me a little bit of the tush push.
Oh yeah,
it's legal, but should it be? I mean, the NFL recently had a debate about like, is this illegal? And they tabled the debate, so we'll go for another year. But it's legal. It's there's nothing sinister about it. It's just a really good, but it's like is it a detriment to the game? Is it doing damage to some of the drama? Somebody from the NFL, I can't remember, said the biggest argument against the tush push is that it's boring. You know how it ends.
You're always going to get fourth down and inches. You're always going to get it.
You're always going to get it. And if you do it, if you're second and goal and you do it 3 times in a row, you're going to get the touchdown.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And torpedo bats, it's legal. Yeah, it's good. Like, look at how successful it is. But it wouldn't surprise me if, depending on how the trend plays out, they revisit the discussion.
I personally love more home runs in baseball. Yeah. I love home runs. Dude, the steroid era, oh my God, it was so fun. You had guys throwing 103 miles an hour. You remember Eric Gagne would throw against Bonds? Yeah. We saw that matchup all the time. Yeah. That exit velocity was like, I don't know, man, you could probably get to Vegas from LA in like a minute on the exit velocity there.
Yeah.
You remember,
somebody recently asked Gagne about that at bat, and he was just going to keep throwing fastballs. It was just mano a mano until somebody won that ball. Yeah, incredible.
And if you're a fan sitting in the stands, that's so fun to watch.
Yeah,
I mean, just so fun to watch. You have these two superhumans literally just going at it.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun. it's funny you bring up the tush push. It's similar in football. They banned the play where when you would try to go block an extra point.
Mhm.
Remember the guys used to climb on each other
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
even
yeah.
higher?
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, it's ingenious, right? Somebody figured out like, well, let's do it this way.
They're like, hey, just you go here and then I'll climb on top of you and
Yeah.
bam. Yeah.
So the question is like, so I did my few minutes of research before we did this show because we like to be prepared here on
Always prepared,
It's
like the
these
Boy
guys.
Scouts.
But one of the was definitely not the first or the earliest cheating scandal, but many years after the fact, somebody looked into the 1951 New York Giants, who famously came back from like 14 games down in October, stormed back, tied the Brooklyn Dodgers. Bobby Thompson wins the 51 pennant with a shot heard around the world, right? The Dodgers win the pennant. The Giants win. Well, they were stealing signs in a way that pushed the boundaries. They had somebody out in the center field looking at the catcher's sign, and then they would have Sal Ivars, I think is how to pronounce the last name. He would hold a baseball up. That meant fastball. If he threw the baseball up, that meant breaking stuff. And the hitters knew. And I don't think any, it did definitely, some guys said they definitely benefited from it. Bobby Thompson, but there's no indications that he participated at any point during he didn't want to know. He felt he was a better hitter if he didn't know. But he really resented any implication that he had been cheating for like the greatest moment of his life and one of the greatest moments of baseball history. He did not want that taint, and he did not want that tainted, sullied in any way. By all indications, that was on the up and up. But there were echoes of it with the Houston Astros, right?
Yeah,
that wasn't somebody in the bullpen doing this and this. That was espionage, high tech
cameras,
premeditated system, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're kicking trash cans and doing things like that, like signaling, like they knew down to like what type of breaking pitch it was going to be. Huh.
Well,
maybe they can.
And then you brought it up in our little off-air chat, but like Gaylord Perry famously used a spitball, which is cheating. Sails into the Hall of Fame unchallenged, unquestioned. I should look that up. I don't remember if he was first ballot, but I presume so. But cheating, and everyone's like, ha ha ha, how cute! What a charming little clever gentleman, Gaylord Perry. He's beloved even now. But
yeah, we love that guy as a Giants fan.
So is that one where you go? The one thing about spitballs, grease balls, whatever he was, Vaseline balls, whatever he was throwing, allegedly. But quick side note, one of my favorite Gaylord Perry stories. It's somebody like his young daughter was at the game. She was like 6 years old or something, and they said, "Hey, does your daddy throw the grease ball?" And the 6-year-old daughter said, "It's a hard slider."
That's awesome.
Love that story. But
I love that story too.
But with the spitball, there was a cat and mouse game. It was illegal. Gaylord got away with it because he was clever enough to disguise it in his inventive ways. Steroids anabolic steroids were illegal at that point, but there was no testing system. There was no punishment. There was no thing in place. So to me, it gets as a Hall of Fame voter, I really struggle with how to regard that era because, and since a lot of this our podcast here is about journalism, as a journalist, I struggled with it. My first 3 years covering Major League Baseball as a beat writer was 2000 to 2003, covering the Giants, and I wrote 400,000 Barry Bonds stories because he was the man of that era. And there was also the era of Sosa and McGwire and all these hitters that just got huge. So how do you write about what seems to be a quite conspicuous, and even more so in retrospect, like this doesn't look right? These guys went from this size to this size.
Brady Anderson.
He also he swears he's clean even now. They went from this size to this size. Bonds went from hitting, kind of the 30-ish home run guy, 35, to 73.
70. Yeah.
So it has all the hallmarks of a suspicious development. But okay, as a writer, you ask someone, "Are you on steroids? Are you taking anything?" And they say no, and then what do you do now? You have no testing methodology. You have no. It ultimately took an FBI raid of the Balco labs to get any kind of documents that tied these players. And as a writer, you don't have that. So I wrote, I mean, in some naivete and just some surrender to the fact, like I wrote about that era pretty glowingly about Bonds and his home run records and climbing up the history books and all that stuff without very often signaling like, hey, there are questions surrounding the methodology. There are questions behind the sudden surge at this age of his career. Technically, I found it difficult. And even in retrospect, I'm not sure what the right way to write about that is.
Wow. That in itself could be a segment for us to talk through and that, because to your point, there was no testing methodology back then. I do even remember reading the stories and all this, that the players that were doing this said, well, it's a new era. We're eating better. We're lifting. We're working out. I remember Bonds would say flaxseed oil. So here's me. I want to hit home runs playing softball. I start eating flaxseed oil, putting them in my smoothies and shake. It tasted terrible, by the way. Didn't really help me hit any more home runs. So I'm like,
Bonds also, he talked about broccoli a lot. He talked about eating broccoli a lot. So kids out there.
H.W. Bush would not like that.
Yeah. But also know even the other way, Canseco came out with a book and kind of named names, but reporters, I was married to Susan Slessor for many years, who covered the A's. They had a bunch of A's guys who were kind of, and not beyond McGuire, beyond Canseco, after their playing days, in fact. But I remember her recounting, asking guys off the record, and they would like go, I have no patience for people who take shortcuts. I put in the work. I would never touch that stuff. And they were later popped for, they were in the Mitchell Report and all that stuff.
They were in Balco. Yeah.
What do you do with that as a journalist? Somebody's telling you to your face, absolutely not. And you have you can't. A lot of times with a journalism question, you can check another source. You can check, does this check out? But with no testing, there was no avenue for saying like, actually, you are full of crap.
Yeah.
And other stuff.
And in journalism, right, you have departments for that, which are investigative journalists, but they're investigating politicians, people in power, right, companies in power, not sports athletes. I mean, maybe now, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was just at the birthday party for one of the this guy, Mark Fainaru-Wada, who, along with Lance Williams of the Chronicle, really investigated the Bonds thing a lot. I believe they wrote a book called Game of Shadows that really delved into the steroid era. But the thing that started not with them unearthing evidence of Bonds cheating, it resulted in the wake of the FBI raid that finally had the document what the Balco lab was doing for these players and how illegal it was. So they couldn't do the raid, but they could report on the raid. And the reporting now stands out still as the best.
Amazing, right? Yeah. I remember that. I remember those times too, and it was tough. I'm sure it was tough for them because everybody was denying it, and that's an interesting story that you're saying. Even off the record, none of these guys would even.
Yeah.
Wow.
They would condemn it and act like, how dare you, even off the record. And I don't. There's not that many players even now who've fessed up, which you get, right? If you say, what, I took some stuff. It diminishes your life's work.
Yeah.
You're a baseball player. That's your identity. That's who you were. That's your career. The records are on Baseball Reference. That's who you were. And anything that would undermine that, you don't want your family, your fans, or yourself to know. Lance Armstrong. Remember, there were a lot of reports early about, hey, look, this guy's doped to the gills, but people did not and do not want to believe it because he was such a beloved guy. He'd pulled such a elaborate thing.
And cancer and that.
Those journalists got just blasted for their coverage, disbelieved and ridiculed, but they were onto something. So it's a real thorny thing. The best book ever on Lance Armstrong was what was it called? Was it called Cycle of Lives by Juliet Macur, Macur, New York
Okay.
Times. It's incredible. Once it was over, once the lies had been revealed, she kind of recounted the whole journey to that point, and it's fascinating the extent of the cover up.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, and you remember they did that Tour of France thing, and then they had to DQ like eight, like the top 10. They DQ'd
Yeah,
like eight
that's
of those
right.
guys,
Yeah,
and like the 11th guy or whatever. Like, well, let me ask you this: back in the steroid era, how rampant was it? I know we had the big superstar guys, but even guys like I remember people were throwing shade on like people like Mike Gallego, that he had like his career and how he was lasted because he
that's
used
right.
performance enhancing stuff, and he was able to play a lot longer. He was able to hit better. How rampant was it back then?
I think
Just
it
in
was.
your opinion.
I would say it's a good question, right? Because you don't know and probably won't know. But I
Yeah.
mean, you look at the body size, you look at the home run totals, um, and I think Canseco in his book, I think he put it. He's a provocateur, like he's going to push but I think he said like 80%. I don't think it was that, but if
Mhm.
it was 50%, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I
Mhm.
think that if you're a minor leaguer and you're in AAA and you got to think, how do I get to the majors? And you see what is being celebrated at the major league level, you're going to take it. If you're a
Yeah.
pitcher, there's a couple guys for who in a Sports Illustrated story just talked about. Yeah, I started taking steroids. My fastball went from 91, which used to be fine, to 96, which got me to the majors. And why wouldn't you do that? It would. I mean, there's obviously ethical reasons, integrity
Well,
reasons,
health reasons too,
but if
right?
you are, if you, especially if you're a minor league pitcher and you get to the majors, your financial outlook changes, your family life changes, your everything changes, and you need that little edge. You can understand that. Let's put it this way: you can understand the temptation. And if you, I
Absolutely.
mean, the story is that Bond saw what McGuire and Sosa were doing and thought, I mean, I'm twice the player they are. If that's what baseball wants, I'll show you what
Mhm.
baseball look. I'll
Mhm.
show you what talent really looks like. And people always said that I got a. This is a really random thing, but my favorite writer ever was this guy named Gay Talese, who wrote for the New
Oh,
Yorker, and he wrote a lot of fame. He wrote
yeah. Know
Frank
him.
Sinatra
Yeah.
Has a Cold, which Esquire voted the greatest story ever in Esquire. And he did a book signing. I met him. We talked. He invited me to dinner, and we started talking about Barry Bonds, and we got an
So
argument
cool.
over Barry Bonds because he said, "Hey, he works harder than everybody else. He works hard. He works harder. He's smarter. He's better. He's more talented." I said, "But it can be both. Like you can work hard. You can be the best. You can be smart because Bonds was brilliant, but he can also take steroids too. That's why you go from A plus to A plus plus plus, which is what he did." So I do, because I do think it was true. Bonds was not lazy. He was not. He was not. His talent was not owed to the steroids. His talent was enhanced by it, and so it gets complicated. I don't even remember the question. I think a lot of players were using steroids because I think that was baseball survival back then. So
Sure.
if you were borderline, you were going to make the majors. If you were in the majors, you were going to keep up with the other stars.
And I guess you could say this. You brought up the point that it's super lucrative. You go from just an average guy to a superstar.
Yeah,
That's lucrative, and they're
right.
probably not thinking about the health ramifications, not the short term, or certainly not the long term. But you remember, I think a lot of the shade started to get thrown around when people's biceps start snapping off their arms.
Yeah,
Uh, Guys, their frame's just so big, the body can't support that, right? And you're
yeah,
throwing these crazy, 98-mile-per-hour sliders and things like that, and just
yeah,
blowing your arm out. Yeah, it's
yeah.
kind of crazy. Yeah, well, we'll have to have a segment on that. I mean, that
Yeah.
was a crazy era, and yeah, very challenging from a journalistic standpoint on that there. So,
Yeah,
yeah, good point.
it's and still to this day, because you have the Hall of Fame voting and you're true. I mean, we're kind of getting a little bit far afield from it, but it's still a tough era to evaluate because I think somebody like Sosa is a good example. right? He's a guy who, unlike Bonds, had established himself as a all-time generational great player. Took
Hmm.
steroids. So Sosa had not. So his career is more or less dismissed as a steroid creation, right? It's he only got there. So we don't know. We don't really know how much of that was him and his gifts and his work
Yeah.
ethic and all that stuff. It's just easy to dismiss. McGuire too probably gets dismissed out of hand because we don't know. We didn't have like 15 years of his previous career to evaluate before the steroid suspicion started sneaking in.
Yeah, because it was what, late 80s, I think was I think people generally
Yeah.
think about the late 80s. People
Mm-hmm.
started to like the Rangers, right? You remember when the Rangers had like
Oh, yeah.
Palmeiro and Dean Palmer and then like Juan Gonzalez, right? These guys are just like beefed up and they would just send the ball out of the park.
Yeah.
And then Canseco, McGuire, a few of the A's that time, right? Or late 80s.
Yeah.
And then Sosa, right? Sosa was late 80s too, right? So crazy.
Oh, that was late 90s. 98 was the year the change.
Oh, he was 98. That's
Yeah.
right. Yes. Okay. Well, Dan, I hope that you're not taking any performance enhancements there for your
Clearly not.
your journalistic career. I guess nowadays, right, journalists might have ChatGPT write their articles, and that's performance enhancing drugs there.
Yeah.
Speaking of journalism, I want to pivot into we got a really good question here, and part of what this show's about is to give tips and tricks and also share your experience in the field of journalism, just journalism in general, but also specifically sports journalism, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to read a post here that one of my producers found on, I think it was either Reddit or Quora, of a person who he's a reporter, and here I'll just read this to you. We dubbed this "Resigned Guy's Post," so he's pretty resigned when it comes to journalism. And as you know, in the world of coaching, it's good to be angry, it's good to be excited and happy, but the worst thing you could ever be is resigned. Okay.
It's these resigned guys.
Could you imagine what a boring show that would be? These resigned guys, like, oh, these guys, they're so resigned. Okay, he writes, "Hey, everyone. I'm currently a federal policy reporter in DC. Decent salary, great benefits. My beat's not bad either, but I have a horrible editor and publishers, horrible management, terrifying expectations, and also terrible news that I've constantly been reporting on. I've been reporting for years now, and after lying to myself for years that journalism was great and that I have to brave through every harsh editor, I crashed out not too long ago. I made the conscious decision to exit the space and get into a communications and PR job. Easily transferable skills, and I know that I need the peace, fixed hours, and better pay. However, there's this guilt that's gripped me. I've always worked in journalism, and I've had the absolute privilege of working on projects that have made impact and a difference. But at this point, I'm so burnt out that I have a resignation letter sitting on my laptop, just itching to be sent out." Then he goes on to say, "Journalism and free speech is beginning to look like a joke to me now." And he gets like super, reserved and angry like that. And his question is, has anyone there been in a position like this, leaving journalism and feeling strong guilt for leaving or questions about leaving and sticking to it? I read this. I myself have never been in this situation. When I was doing a lot of stuff, it was on the science side of things. So I was just reporting what scientists were saying, and it was pretty exciting stuff to me. But I could see as a political reporter there, I could see where that would get someone to this point. So my question to you, Dan, is, if you're coaching this is a real thing, not just for journalism, but in life in general. People, it's an ebb and flow. So have you ever felt like this before, or have you ever coached anyone who has felt like this before and mentored that person? And how'd you do it?
I've never felt that way before, but I have felt echoes of some of the frustrations before. And I've never coached somebody, but I know lots of people who follow that exact same path. They end up in communications, like the guy said, easily transferable skills, which is knowing the information, knowing how the media works, being able to be a liaison between, maybe a company or organization and the press, and making sure the right information is being, you see it every day. So being just flipping and being on the other side of it, it's like, I get it. The thing that I read that before, and it's pretty interesting to me. I would have a question for him, like, why not just go someplace else? If some of
Mhm.
the issue is, horrible, what he read, horrible editor, horrible publisher,
Publishers, yeah.
which that would be, so that is a situation where I have been fortunate I've had one editor that I couldn't stand in my 420 years of journalism, and he was the number two guy. And it was, if this guy became number one, I may have not left journalism, but I may have left where I was working just for that purpose, because we didn't get along and I didn't see eye to eye. So I wonder, like, has this been a pattern? Did he have an option to go someplace else? Because it's just the boss you don't like. Every profession has that, and nobody wants. I mean, I think a bad boss where there's constant conflict, any walk of life, you're going to maybe look to make a change, especially in this case when it's not like he said, like, decent salary. He didn't say, like, but the money makes it worthwhile.
That's why I'm here. It's for the cash.
Because I wonder what he means by that. I wonder if he what my it sounds like this is a tangent, but this is fun to me. This is fundamental in understanding what he's frustrated by,
Sure.
which is, was he digging up information and writing stories that were somehow stifled or altered or rewritten? Were they having creative differences about sourcing and what they could trust and what they could not trust? Because that would frustrate you out of a job, right? You're out there trying to learn the truth, and this is not a common. People think this is a common thing in journalism, like, oh, the management or the advertisers, they want you to alter the truth and make it more palatable. I don't. That doesn't. It can happen, but I've never seen it happen personally, and I don't know if this guy is at a big publication or a small one or what the nature is. But if he was having frustration of unearthing news that people need to know, and a horrible publisher was pushing back on it, that's a key piece for me, because that raises the question, like, he would be writing saying, what am I even doing this for?
Mhm.
So in terms of, like, the low pay, yeah, or what do you say? He didn't say low. He said decent.
Decent. That
uh,
his PR job gives him decent pay,
yeah,
alluding to the fact that journalism doesn't pay at all. Which,
and you don't have set hours, because new news doesn't have set hours. Something could break. They can
to
make it
me,
straight.
that's fun though. I
It's
love
fun.
that.
Yeah,
I love not having set hours.
yeah, right. So
That's what I loved about it.
if you're awake, it's presumed you're on the clock, and if the news breaks, you're going to be all over it. And yeah, I know, I love it too. I love it too. It's like, what great things does today begin? So, and then what was last? I wrote down something I can't see.
Oh, yeah, my arms are getting longer and longer, so I can see
I wrote
things.
writing terrible news. I could see that.
Hmm.
I did have a job like that. I was a police beat reporter briefly, and I didn't enjoy
I
writing
don't think
about.
I knew that.
Yeah, briefly, I was a police reporter.
Oh,
Uh, I'd been hired as a sports writer. This is the Davis Enterprise.
hey, the
A
Davis
town,
Enterprise.
in a
Shout
town
out.
not known for crime. Um,
No, bicycle
bicycle
stolen.
theft, yes. But before the sports job was open, I was going to fill in the cover with them on the police beat until I took over. And what I found was, with the police beat, is there was bad stuff. I wrote about a drunk driving accident that killed um, a mother and her unborn baby, and I wrote about that, and it stayed with me in a way that Giants beating the Brewers 6-2 does not. I go home tossing and turning about it. I covered a murder trial. It affected me in a way, and I could see getting burnt out of that. So you kind of have to be careful about your beat path, what you
True,
choose to write
true.
about, and those aren't everyday things. But I think there are some reporters who can write about that in a more detached way.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
Speaking of staying fresh, I'm gonna plug in my battery before we go off the air here. So
Oh, we don't
hang
want to
on.
do that.
We're gonna do some technical stuff. Anyway, what do you make? What do you make it? Well, actually, let me answer the question. You said, well, how would I coach that person?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would say find another outlet to write, and I'm gonna find
yeah.
another outlet to plug this.
Hey, you plan that. See, that's Dan is amazing like that. Always quick-witted.
um,
Um, you brought up a good point, though. Your point being that this is not a thing only that journalism it happens in
right,
journalism. It's in any gig. So what you asked me, like if I'm coaching someone in whatever it is, that is it. I would say, well, is like how bad is it? Like, is it so bad that the creative outlet or the creative what you're going to create outweighs
mhm,
how it's making you feel or bringing you down that will get you to the point where you're not going to create. You see what I'm saying? It's like a
yeah,
chicken and an egg
for
thing.
sure,
And yeah, don't give up the it's like one of those things. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
yeah,
So, so don't give up, don't give out journalism. I would have coached this guy like, okay, yeah, makes sense. Give up that beat. It sounded like
yeah,
he was really disenfranchised with politics. He covered politics. So I could see where that could be very, it's this all day long.
yeah,
So maybe give that up. Maybe write some features, travel, hey, food, I don't know,
yeah.
something else. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know what your experience has been. I've had bosses that I've liked some more than others. I always just wait them out. Like they'll
They,
be gone.
they
They'll be
eventually,
gone eventually. Yeah,
yes, they wash out in the end, generally
yeah,
speaking, they
yeah,
do. And that's it. And most of the time, if you can change your context and your perspective on that person, it changes your entire demeanor.
right.
That if you are just like, okay, well, obviously this guy's just trying to climb the ladder, or he's not, maybe he's incompetent, change that lens on, okay, what can you do to affect your own environment and
Yeah,
then get to that point. Easier said than done, right? I mean,
for
you're
sure.
the person's in it. So it's one thing for me to say, well, just change your context there. But then they'll be like, yo, buddy, you don't have to be here when this guy changes my lead and puts something super terrible. And now my name's on it.
Right,
I'd be like, I get that,
right, right.
So,
And then two, we uh, if you are on a beat and have been on it for a long time, you have a ton of sources, you have an expertise, you have an understanding that you don't want to give up and start over again and be a rookie like a movie go be a
it's true.
movie critic. You've got this life's work and you've got this built up reputation and you want to make use of it. And if you're being stifled in some way, I can understand why that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
But I think
I think,
we both touched like these things are not. I mean, the one thing specific to journalism here, I think, is if what he was reporting was being altered, pushed back, censored, that's a deal breaker.
yeah, no, I think that's really that's a good point right there. And that's part, I mean, that would be part of that coaching is to ask this guy, like, what is important to you? So I loved what you said as you read this and you said, well, I would have questions for him. Of
Mhm.
course, of course.
Yeah.
It is funny though that Reddit, everybody's a coach and a mentor on
Uh-huh.
Reddit. It's kind of funny. So I did read some of these
Yeah.
comments of like they're like, dude, just it's journalism, man, like sack up. Or they'd say, well, just leave. Or nobody would say, hey, I got a question for you on. No one
Yeah.
went there. No one said like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
funny.
What's wrong? That's the key. That's the key to the thing. Yeah.
Everybody had advice, but no one said, hey man, what's wrong? So this is interesting. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to cut this segment out and we'll post it back on there and say, hey buddy, here's some real coaching for you.
But I want to talk to the editor and say, where's the friction coming from the writer?
Yeah.
Like,
good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Love it, dude. As always, that was a great segment. So good stuff there. And that leads us into
there's a bag.
There's
It's
a bag.
blown.
And the thing is, I added a few more in here. We had a few more.
Yeah. Is it
Let's
full?
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's about, we have enough for about 12, 14 more shows. Yeah, there's a lot in here. Okay. Until we got to start to solicit for more. Okay, what do we have here? Ah, sports. S for
Sports, all right.
sport. It looks like sports.
Okay, so we can do.
Let's see. Oh, wow. Okay, bro, this is amazing. This is amazing. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
What's your take on Pete Rose and the steroid era players? Should they be in the Hall of Fame? Dude,
Well,
this is insane. I
easy
can
one,
make this
easy
up.
one. A non-controversial one. That's good. You know what? On Pete Rose, I'm a big no.
Okay.
To me, it's two different
Okay.
categories. Pete Rose's violation was different than. Here's the thing: Pete broke a long-standing rule, and the rule that for many, many, many years was the number one rule in baseball: do not bet on baseball. You walk into a major league clubhouse, major league locker room, they've got that sign posted on the wall: do not bet on baseball.
Oh,
We know the
I didn't know
consequences.
that.
It's from the 1919 World Series that ended up being fixed because it almost ruined baseball. So baseball took it very seriously and said, if you gamble, you take a lifetime ban. Pete knew that and broke it anyway, and then lied about it, and then lied about it, and lied about it. And there was a recent documentary on HBO, kind of a 3-part thing. It was a flawed documentary, but it really delved into. I'm like a lot of people. I might have been willing to forgive had he atoned, taken responsibility. Like, he didn't have to suck up to baseball. He could have changed he spent the rest of the guy banned for baseball, trying to get into the Hall of Fame, spent the rest of his life in Vegas, making a name for himself as a gambler in Vegas and giving gambling
signing
tips
memorabilia,
baseballs. Yeah. And, he did say, he would sign balls saying, like, I bet on baseball. So he finally acknowledged it. But if you watch the documentary, for all it's very good, but it's got their flaws. But you see how often baseball gave him a path, a clear lane to make things right. And Pete chose every time that avenue came up to burn that avenue and blow it up and burn that bridge. And it was so frustrating. And I don't think it was on the onus was on baseball to forgive and forget. It was on to Pete to, he was so great and so charismatic and meant so much to so many people that people wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. And all he had to do was take the olive branch and go, and he wouldn't do it. And the Shakespearean tragedy, we grew up in the era when Pete was still playing, and we know what an electrifying person he was, but he committed the sin, and he knew that was a price, and he took it. With the steroid guys, there was no sign posted in clubhouse saying no steroids. I struggle with this one. If you said, I don't think they should be in, they cheated, I think that's a valid argument. I've chosen to. I've changed. I was that guy, but I've changed to like, hey, look, baseball turned a blind eye to it. Baseball profited. Baseball more or less encouraged it. Bud Selig, the commissioner of that era, was inducted into the Hall of Fame. Managers who managed these players on steroids went into the Hall of Fame, despite certainly knowing what was going on, or at least having the brains not to ask what was going on.
I don't know why you just gained 30 pounds in 1 month.
Broccoli. So I think what I vote is I hold my nose and I do my best to pick what I believe to be the best players of that era. And I check the box and, kind of like, let's get past this era. But I think that it was an era with lots of blame and flaws, and we just do our best to do that era justice with kind of the lawless Wild West terrain that we had in terms of enforcing steroid use.
Yeah, it's interesting because we were just talking about that earlier in this show.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you think we will ever see guys like Bonds and Clemens and A-Rod voted into the Hall of Fame?
I thought that they would get more support because there's a veterans committee that has former major league players on it. It's like a 16-person committee. And I thought among the players and among the peers that they might see it differently than writers did, because everybody calls writers sanctimonious. It's the only time that word comes up, right? Or sanctimonious, right? Or the
Man,
morality.
I don't experience that out of you at all. You're not
I'm
sanctimonious at
not.
all.
No, well, I guess I am the moral, but I do find it a thorny question. Anyway, we could cover that. But I don't think the players do not, like Clemens and Bonds, have not appeared to get any more support on the Veterans Committee than they did with the writers. And I think a lot of I've always been unclear because there are ebbs and flows, but the current Hall of Famers, how do they react when Sosa gets into the Hall of Fame, right? Somebody who probably by the letter of the law cheated their whole careers against Al Kaline, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, to join that fraternity under, some would argue, fraudulent means. So their sin, I wish they were more public about their sentiment, because what they said and what they want would be of value to me. I do know that there are some former players, including Hall of Famers, who were okay with it and have said so. Willie Mays, I mean, he was Mays' godfather, but Mays was vocally supportive of Barry and thought it was a travesty he wasn't in the Hall of Fame. I think McCovey, who was around, said so, probably less strongly, but he indicated he was okay with it. So I wish they were public, because if they know the code, they know the baseball code in a way that I think is important to understand. Do the real Hall of Famers, are they okay with Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens joining them, or are they adamantly against? It would factor into my vote.
Yeah. No, great points as always. Another thing too, you just said, right? Sosa, perhaps his entire career, or that made his career. Whereas guys like Clemens and Bonds, they were great before they were on it. And you knew that. And you saw Clemens had a Cy Young, right? Or two.
Right.
Bonds had a couple MVPs before he started. Yeah. So
So I put that question. There was Tom Verducci, the great baseball writer for Sports Illustrated, and now does a lot of MLB. I put that. I was interviewing Hall of Fame voters at the time, what they thought, and I said, hey, Bonds was established as a Hall of Famer before the steroid allegation. He goes, does that mean Derek Jeter can start cheating now? Does that mean Chipper Jones can start cheating now? They have established themselves. Do they have license now? He says, when I vote on somebody, I don't vote for a segment of their career. I vote on the entirety of the career. What was their legacy? How are they remembered? And I thought, okay, that is a very interesting point. Like, you don't get a free pass on questions of the sportsmanship line, however it's phrased on the ballot. You don't get a pass on cheating, and your career isn't. We don't vote on the first 10 years. We vote on the whole thing.
The whole thing. Another great point. So I did make it to a World Series of Poker final table.
Oh,
no cheating. So, but if I started to cheat now, I'd take some Adderall, performance enhancing.
That's right.
I would be judged, and I will never be in the Poker Hall of Fame.
Hidden cameras. Yeah.
Hidden cameras. Yes. In my glasses. I got hidden cameras in my glasses here.
Perfect.
Dan, as always, missed you the last couple weeks. This is so fun. I love spending this hour with you, and just so knowledgeable. Great stuff, and great stuff out there for our listeners. And thank you again.
Thanks,
this is amazing. And let me pull our outro.
Oh,
because I believe we have our outro here. I don't know. We had some problems with the intro.
This is why people listen all the way to the end, is that they can hear.
Yeah, they want to know, like, I don't know if you can hear that. Yeah.
If you hear volume, does that save us from a copyright infringement?
Yeah, I think so. We got nabbed on the copyright. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. Dan, as always, great to see you. See you next time.
That's right.
And